Greetings. My name is John Laires, and I'm the CEO for Indigo Park Canada. I got involved with parking back in 1995, and not necessarily with a parking enterprise, but actually with a property development and management company that actually held land for future development, and we were leasing these lands to parking companies. So that was my first introduction to the parking concept. From there, it was interesting because my interactions with a particular company were fairly involved because we had quite a bit of holdings that not only were we anticipating development on these properties, but we were also having the properties developed with some parking components where we had paid parking. And so this company at one point in time decided to recruit me. And I decided, why not? Why not get into the parking side of things? It looked intriguing and fascinating. Timing was everything. And so in early 97, I got into 100% parking management. I have not looked back. That's what's fascinating about parking, is it truly is one of the most entrepreneurial environments that I've come across. I had the pleasure of starting a variety of different small companies, but the one I'm sure that you're referring to is a company called West Park, which I had the pleasure to do with a few other colleagues from a previous company. And it was quite exciting. I mean, it had very humble beginnings, and you start with one location, and before you know it, you have 300 locations, and you're drawing the attention of some other players, and that led to a joint venture with a company based in France, and the rest is history. Here I am today, still with that company that we did the joint venture with, except today we have fully amalgamated the organizations and we're coast to coast. Having completed my studies in university, and you learn all kinds of different disciplines, whether it's marketing or finance, operations, you name it. You all of a sudden come into an environment where you're utilizing each and every one of those disciplines throughout the day. So you're not necessarily concentrating on one, but you're doing all of them. And parking has been able to provide that environment. And so it's been really exciting. So yes, surprising to a certain degree, but it's exciting and it's ever changing. There's nothing ever the same one day to the next. And we have a variety of different environments. So we have facilities that are just one parking space, and we have facilities that are 10,000 parking spaces, but they come in all shapes and sizes. They come with different needs. They address different consumer markets. And so it's varied. I remember coming into the industry, and whenever I would talk in social circles that I'm in parking, at the time, they would say, okay, well, listen, let me know which parking lot you're at. I'll come and visit tomorrow and I'll say hi to you, conjuring an idea that I'm in a booth somewhere and I'm collecting payments. And yes, I've done that, but parking is so much more than that. And so it was always great to be able to sit back and explain what parking is all about to individuals who had this idea that you're in the booth, and perhaps back in the day, we would always joke, you have a shoebox and you're collecting money and you're putting it in there. And it was even more than that back in the day. And imagine today with the evolution of transactional processes, it's come so much further. But here we are, and it continues to evolve, and it continues to be exciting. It's ever changing. It's never going to stop. One thing that is a common denominator to all of this is that there's always going to be a need for a place to rest your vehicle. And there's always been this notion, and I've been hearing it for decades now, that at some point in time, our industry is going to go the way of the dodo bird. And I don't believe that, because we are a society that relies on movement and quick movement of not only people, but goods as well. And so having a place where you can rest a vehicle will always be a necessity. And in our industry, we have seen the evolution of more so the transactional process. But what we're going to see in the future is perhaps evolving into what to do with that vehicle, with the mobility and the logistics related to that. So up until now, the evolution has really been at the ground level with regards to dealing with the consumers and when they need to park their cars. And I've always said that in our industry, we're basically a hotel for cars when you think about it. But in the future, that hotel is going to become more like a resort. And so in the resort, you have a variety of different amenities. You have a variety of different moving parts that are servicing great many ecosystems. And that's where I see the evolution of parking going to. So it's still going to be there, but it's going to become more. And especially in centers in North America, and it's happening throughout Europe and also in Asia, where there's high densification. The suburban living has been depleted and urban living has always been increasing. But as we have denser downtowns, denser areas, where do you now stage for certain activities? And those activities could be last mile logistics. They could be servicing a variety of other industries. And so the place where you actually find that there is enough room to accommodate some of this are parking areas. And so you could see how the evolution of the parking area all of a sudden is going to go beyond just a simple car, but perhaps other amenities that could be serviced out of there. And definitely being in the parking industry, we are the first and last contact with. At one point in time, it was just parking a vehicle. That was it. The vehicles have changed. Yes, we have electric vehicles, but that doesn't change anything. What it changes, though, is the service amenities that we offer those vehicles. So, of course, back in the day, you couldn't pump gas into a car, although we did come up with some services where we would have mobile services that would come out and actually provide refueling services for your vehicle. But today, because the vehicles have evolved, we have electric vehicles, we can now actually have refueling stations, quote unquote, energizing electric vehicles. Now go beyond that. We are now servicing vehicles that don't necessarily have 4 wheels. Some have 2 wheels, others have 18 wheels. And being able to expand our horizons to service a variety of different vehicles types that do different functions. So it's not just a commuter, it's also people who are involved in logistics, delivering services, delivering products, sometimes even having sites that will actually facilitate the distribution of goods and services is what makes this exciting. And that's where the evolution of this industry is really going towards. I think some clients would be surprised at the level of detail that goes into our business. We have environments where we are juggling a variety of different needs, demands with regards to a single parking facility with a very limited inventory. And our job is really to do 2 things. And I mentioned these before, which is the customer experience is important, and then the yield management. And those are 2 concepts that are very high when in the hospitality industry. And when I think about hospitality and hotels and airlines, we're no dissimilar. We may not have a seat on the plane, and there may not be a room in a hotel, but it's a parking space in a parking facility that potentially is part of a much larger complex. So everything has to work in unison. That is the parking space. It's also how does it relate to the rest of the ecosystem that it's serving. And that is really fascinating. And what can we do to ensure that, one, the customer experience is exceptional and that we are indeed maximizing the yields on these properties? And so things like business intelligence tools, the data metrics that we collect, and the ability to be able to analyze the behavior of the consumers and offer what they need at a time and at a price that is convenient is pretty complex and convoluted and sometimes misunderstood. And so being able to dial into those particular aspects is very important in our business. And it takes quite a bit of effort. It takes a lot of individuals. It takes systems that have been developed that are specific to our industry. So over the years, and especially these days, the digital platform has been very important to us. So when you look at the use of a handheld phone, a smartphone, that device has become many things to many people. Parking is no dissimilar to that. And so we've invested heavily into developing applications for the smartphones that allow individuals to find a parking space, pre-book it, determine how long they want to stay, how much they would like to pay, what type of product would they wish to purchase. And so that has been an incredible evolution for our industry. And that has developed a variety of other modules that have been necessary to make the company more efficient. So reporting mechanisms, not only for our team members in order for them to properly manage the assets, but also for our clients, who then are able to assess the value of their properties through a through the income that is generated. When you think about the data metrics that we require to really properly assess consumer behavior, predictive analysis, artificial intelligence obviously has a role to play in that. And so AI is only as good as what you put into it. And so in our business, we do have a lot of data points that are collected, and being able to basically extract from that some predictable behavior or circumstances. And these circumstances could be related to a variety of different variables. So it's not just the day of the week. It could be the hour of the day. It could be the temperature. It could be what's happening from a weather perspective. It could be what's taking place in and around a certain area that is perhaps changing the circumstances from one day, 1 hour, 1 week to the next. So AI obviously helps accelerate these analyses and helps us actually enhance what we want to deliver in terms of the best product at the best time, at the best price to our consumers. I've always been someone who doesn't mind getting in the trenches. And so being able to understand every facet of the business is very critical. We have a variety of different positions throughout the company that are necessary to provide the product of parking to our consumers. And we actually service two different levels of consumers. We've got what I call the parking guest. So the individuals who actually park their vehicles with us. And then we have our clients who are, for the most part, the entities, individuals or organizations that own the parking assets for whom we actually provide a service. In some instances, we have the privilege of owning some of these assets, but for the most part, we are actually engaged to manage these assets on their behalf. And so what's great about this is that you have so many different moving parts that in order for it to work properly, one needs to be familiar with everything. And so from a leadership perspective, I'm proud to say that I've pretty much worked every position in the organization and don't mind doing it even today. Some days I yearn for getting out of the office and going back to the facility. Sometimes there's excitement when you're managing a parking facility that services an arena or a stadium, and there's a concert going on or a hockey game or football, and you have these throngs of individuals and vehicles coming into your facility, and you're managing traffic, you're doing transactions, you're directing individuals to where they need to go. There's a certain level of excitement about that, and I still really enjoy doing that. And so it's an opportunity to also illustrate to our team members customer service and yield management. And so those are two very fundamental aspects of our business that are important, that I find really define the success of an organization in this industry. It's the ability to have like-minded individuals in the organization that have a certain level of care and pride in what they do, but also a yearning for always wanting to do better and learn more. There's rarely a day that goes by where I'm not learning something new myself. And having that desire to always push ourselves to be better is phenomenal. And we've surrounded ourselves with individuals that have that same yearning. And that's what makes us really great. And that's what's been pushing the organization to be where it is today. I'm really proud of our people. Our clients really have a relationship more so with the people. They understand that when you are dealing with Indigo, you can expect a certain level of quality, a certain level of professionalism. And that comes because it is exuded by the individuals that we have working in our team. So really that's the differentiator. And we develop a culture where we will do anything possible to make sure that we are delivering on all cylinders, but also a culture that looks outside of all the walls that have been put in front of us. We really have a vision to always think outside of the box. And it's that sort of innovative environment that is necessary, especially in our industry, because it's ever changing. We're always faced with challenges, whether it's as simple as a road closure or as complicated as a reconstruction of a building. Our people are always sitting back and thinking about how do we do this. And what's incredible is that we have people that have multi-talents, but they also understand that we can rely on each other. So our people are really our strength. I always think about parking facilities that have no controls. And to this day, there are still many that have no controls. And it's an interesting evolution the moment you introduce controls. And what I say about controls is that parking typically is something that is very expensive when developers start thinking about how many spaces to add to their project. And it's a cost that typically doesn't have a return. And so by implementing controls, you can start actually devising a return on investment. And sometimes those controls may not necessarily be to immediately implement paid parking, but it could be just to identify rules and guidelines that will dictate the behavior of the parker on those facilities, what makes them able to use that parking facility. And the one that comes to mind, the environment that is, not a specific location, but the environment, are retail centers. And so in many aspects, the retail centers were created by offering ample parking free of charge. What's happened since then with the densification of our urban centers and with the advent of public transportation is that some of these inventories of parking are being utilized not necessarily to supplement the retail center, but potentially neighboring centers who may have identified that there was an ample parking inventory on the other side. So why should they invest in building that parking inventory? And on other circumstances with public transportation, individuals who would take advantage of the parking facility to basically park and ride. In one case or another, there would be always vehicles parked on the facility that were unidentifiable, that don't necessarily park there because they're doing business at that center. And so implementing controls to identify who those users are is already an evolution and a step forward to ensuring that the inventory that was built that was specific for that center is being indeed utilized for that center. Once you identify who those parkers are, you're then able to ascertain whether or not you have excess capacity. And it is with that excess capacity that you can then start generating income. And then all of a sudden, what appeared to be a loss leader becomes an income stream. And that's where we provide great value.